are live here with Dr. Rob.
Hey guys, good to be here.
Yeah, so we are doing a Ask the Doc this morning. I really feel like there, well, I think even for me, I wanted to know you even on a deeper level, but I think that there's people out there that don't know the full scope of who you are. So yes, breaking through addiction and Ask the Doc, and this is really a part of it. So I really want to start the conversation around when did were you a doctor before you were homeless and addicted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was the crazy part about it is that I graduated, and then about a year later, I think it was, maybe 2 years, I lost everything and became homeless.
Wow. Okay. So for some reason, I thought it was reversed.
I know a lot of people think that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, your brain was spiraling in the midst of your schooling.
Yes.
Wow.
It was actually spiraling probably through high school and then definitely into college, definitely spiraling like crazy. So I was probably out of control by the time I was in college.
What were your, did you have consequences up to that point?
You know, I didn't really. I didn't have consequences till the end. And the reasons why I didn't is I was always a good provider. So I know, looking back now, that, you know, the being a good provider and earning good money all the time sort of masked my alcoholism when I was allowed to get away with a lot of stuff that would have probably spotlighted it early on had the money not been there.
That's so fascinating. What do you think the percentage of that is out there in the world that's real? Like where people are masking their alcoholism or their dysfunction because
probably about 25%, I would imagine, only because of the wealth that we look at in the UK. So the average person in the UK probably earns about 30, 40,000 a year. So if you're a middle lower class family, you probably, you know, when you live in paycheck to paycheck, like I was one time, then it's more apparent and quicker that, you know, we have X amount of dollars to pay the rent, but, you know, we've only got $6 left. What's happened to the money? So when it comes a choice between paying the bills or drinking, and you're drinking, then it's highlighted. But when you have enough money to pay the mortgage 20 years in a row without ever earning again from today, then it's because my answer was always going to be, well, look what I provide.
Interesting. So what was the thing that had it spiral out of control?
I think just being able to get away with it. And I remember going down to London with my wife and the kids for a business meeting and being that drunk the night before in the hotel bar that I couldn't make the meeting. And I felt horrible the next day. And we had to come all the way back home, and we'd gone specifically for that meeting. And another time I was supposed to meet again at the airport that we'd planned a contract signing. That's all it was. We'd worked on this contract for at least a year. And my job was to get to the airport, wait for him to get off the plane, sit in the airport lounge and get him to sign a contract. And that was it. Job done. But his plane got delayed by 3 hours. And by the time he got there, I was drunk and they had to take me to hospital. So I think that was kind of a big warning that things were going wrong. But I drank myself into telling my brain that it's going to be okay.
Wow. So from there, was that the spiral? Then everything, you just started losing things one by one?
Yeah, the actual loss of everything came really quick. Although the alcoholism took its toll over several years, when it went wrong real quick. Like I did some horrible stuff, and then I went to Spain, and when I came back home, it was kind of all over. So I got back home, and the locks had been changed to the house, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me! This is my house." So I was banging on the window, and my daughters were seeing all this, and she called the police. And the police came, and I'm paying the mortgage, and she's never worked since, you know, we got married, and I've always provided. So it's kind of my house, even though it's of both of us. But they said if I wouldn't leave, they'd lock me up, they'd arrest me. So I was locked out my own house. And then from there to homelessness was probably about 4 months. And it was all done. Yeah, it was all done and dusted.
So when you were, did you just go, all right, fuck it, I'm just gonna be homeless?
No, I definitely, I tried several times, and then I lived at my mom's. And then my wife called my mom and said, if you keep Rob in the house with you, you're not going to see your grandkids ever again. So my mom and my dad, especially my dad, and I was drinking at the time as well, threw me out, just said I had to leave. And that's what happened. I left and I went to a friend's, and then they saw it and they threw me out. And I went to acquaintances and they saw it and they threw me out. Then he ended up on the streets. And that period of time was probably about 3 months as well.
So what do you think, what's the percentage of alcoholics that need to have to actually, or addicts have to have that experience, Dr. Rob, to then get the help?
Here's the interesting part. Many people think that a bottom is homelessness or the loss of everything. We picked a girl up 2 or 3 years ago from a hotel suite that was a fortune, drinking probably $1,000 bottles of champagne. That was her bottom. So I think the psychological bottom we talk about is the loss of oneself, because the definition of insanity to me is not being able to see my own truth. And I couldn't see it. I really couldn't see it. So the bottom we talk about, I'd say about 99% of people have to get there before they accept help. And if they don't, they're not the real alcoholic. They can stop or moderate given a sufficient reason. I know guys go to treatment, never drink again. Not real alcoholic. Not real alcoholic. So, we've got to be careful what we're classing as alcoholic and what we're classing as heavy drinkers and alcohol abusers. There's a big difference.
And that's so interesting because my kids talk about that quite a bit. They talk about those distinctions. And when you are treating somebody, do you decide that?
No. Well, the crazy thing is alcoholism is the only self-diagnosed illness in the world. And the way I put it over to people is, when you take the first drink, can you stop? And if the answer is, well, no, then you're probably alcoholic, I tell them. But we can tell. Like the first time I put alcohol in my body, the whole world changed. And that's the big difference there. If I'm putting alcohol before everything else, there's probably a good chance of being alcoholic. But 10 DUIs do not make you an alcoholic. The doctor cannot diagnose you as being an alcoholic. It doesn't work like that. And that's what many people think. You find out that most people that think they're alcoholic are actually heavy drinkers because they can stop. They go to a first 12-step meeting and I'll stop drinking now. You're not alcoholic if you can do that. Why are you wasting your time going to 12-step meetings if you don't have to go? Right. Unless you're bored or something. And that's fine. Most of the 12-step room, as long as you have a desire to start drinking, they're good with that. But, if I was given a choice between going and not going, if I was a heavy drinker, I wouldn't be going to AA meetings. There's no way.
Interesting. Why?
Because I just think it's full of people that have a drink problem and I don't. That's probably the be all and end all. I mean, my first meeting I went to, it was 90 minutes in the UK. I spent 90 minutes going around judging everybody.
Yeah.
So it was just, and I still sometimes do that today. I have to catch myself.
What do you think that is? What do you think that is inside the brain that has us go and judge other people? Because I know that when I first walked into meetings, I was like, these are not my people. What has us, and yet they were so my people. So what has us do that in the brain?
I think it's not, if I do that, I don't have to look at me.
Yeah.
And I would go to meetings in London and see my garbage man there. And my ego and my, up my own arse kind of thing says, I'm not going to a meeting with my garbage man. Who do you think I am? And it's just crazy stuff like that. It's just crazy thinking. And, I can't go to a meeting there because it's too near. What if I bumped into somebody I recognize? It's like, well, obviously he's got the same problem as you. So you're both not going to shout it from the top of the roof, just go there. But my ego and my pride and my self-importance, so-called, got in the way, I think. Yeah.
Well, that self-importance, I think, is a real thing. And it's not just the alcoholic or the addict or, that has that, right? Like, as a human, that's part of what it is. As a brain doctor, as somebody that studies the brain, How do you support somebody in getting out of their ego or humbling themselves? Because I mean, that's a kind of a deep psychological question, but I'm curious how you support that and help people.
I think once you hit that psychological bottom, all barriers seem to drop. And the biggest concept that I have with people is that I've been there and done it. So when people come to me and go, yeah, Dr. Rob, you don't understand, you've never been homeless. Well, yeah, I have. And let me explain to you. And when we get that communication and the dialogue going, the trust is the first thing we build. So I can build trust with another alcoholic within 10 minutes. It might take a counselor who's never been an alcoholic or addict probably 3 weeks to do the same thing, because we're straight in there. And then once I'm sharing my story and they share their story, then we get down to the fundamental basics of, first of all, everybody knows. So let's cut that other way. Secondly, you're not that important. You're an alcoholic. Let's drop everything else, especially when I work with A-list guys who are household names. You know, it's dropping that ego. And alcohol and relapse and torment when we wake up is a good leveler. It really is a good lever of pride, of going, you know something, I can't do this anymore. Because I asked the same question to a lot of people is, when you wake up next morning, what was it like? And like, well, I don't know where the car was. I don't know whether I got in a fight or stabbed somebody. I woke up in blood. It's like there's only so many times you can do that before you think, I need some help. This is getting out of control.
Yeah. And, you know, you do work and have worked with the A-listers and celebrities, and you've done a lot of that. And I think, and people get wooed by that, but I don't imagine that you do anything different with them than you did with the average Joe. Is that correct?
Well, it's correct. But what I always say is, yes, I do something different. When they get off the plane, I say, hey, here we go. You're an alcoholic. I don't give a shit who you are. And if you start any crap with me, I'm going to put you back on the plane. You know, so we have to level the pride straight away. I remember, and it's okay to mention this, but I remember Eddie Van Halen coming over. And I'd not been in the country that long. I didn't know who Eddie Van Halen was. And he come over to me and he said, Dr. Rob. And I said, yeah. And he said, aren't you supposed to recognize me? And straight away I knew he was going to have a problem. But after a few weeks, he was a great guy in the end. But, you know, it's a leveler. I don't allow my staff to take photographs of them. If you mention it online or we're working with somebody, you're done, especially with HIPAA regulations. But this is just my regulation. I will very rarely have a photograph taken with them, because if I'm trying to level the pride and next minute going, oh, can I have a photograph with you or a signed, you know, I remember Marshall Mathers talking on the radio and said, I think it's one of his songs, like he's signing records while he's signing CDs while he's being fingerprinted. I mean, it's got to be one or the other. So, you know, I have been starstruck. Don't get me wrong. I was starstruck working in a guy's house in Highland Park when the president, George Bush, walked in. I was absolutely, it threw me off. But I have to get leveled as well and saying, okay, I'm here to do a job. And it doesn't make the difference who you are. And I think my cockiness, my arrogance, and my knowing that I'm the best in the industry puts me on a level to take no shit off anybody and get the job done.
Well, I think anytime you treat somebody like a human being is that's the difference, right? You know, signing autographs and doing, you know, that kind of stuff while you're getting fingerprints. That's just not cool. And so what I hear is that you really treat people like they're human first, and their celebrity status is what it is.
Definitely. And people will say to me, well, when you get them over, do you strip them of everything, make them sleep in a white room with no, they can have, we've had horses, we've had bodyguards, we had private chefs when we used to have the ranch, and, you know, anything they want, they can have. It's not about stripping people of anything. You know, the treatment centers that make you get up at 6 and make you do a 5-mile run, that's not going to get you sober. You know, the army isn't going to get you sober. The military style isn't going to get you sober. What's going to get you sober is changing the way you think.
So let's talk about that. You know, celebrities have, they've had a level of, I'm looking for a word, but they've had a level of access points to whatever they've wanted. And so their brain might be a little bit different in that way. But what does make you the best in supporting people and getting sober? To anyone, not just celebrities?
I think, first of all, my experience and my knowledge of what alcoholism and addiction is all about. Most people, when I ask them what's an alcoholic, they say it's someone who drinks too much alcohol. Alcohol has very little to do with alcoholism. So the knowledge makes me confident. My success rate of 97% makes me very confident. And the knowledge that the program that I created some years ago actually works. And it works to the extent where I offer a money back guarantee. My wife wants to kill me for doing it, but I'm that confident that if you follow the program, this is what's happened. And this is evidence-based research for the last 20 something years to bring this program together. So it's all about changing behavior, changing neural pathways, the way we think, and repetition strengthens and confirms anything. It's like if you want to, learn to fly a plane, 15,000 hours in the air is what you need to become a pilot. If you want to be a recovered alcoholic and never touch alcohol again, maybe it's 15,000 hours of doing what you're supposed to do, follow the program and live a clean life.
I love that. And the willingness has to be there, of course.
It's 100% willingness. And that's why we have an assessment. We want to assess the patient before we take them on, because most of the times I'm guaranteeing to parents that don't worry, we got them. We got your child. When we're finished, he won't drink a drug. Everything will be good. He'll be a great person. He'll get on with his life. He'll get straight A's. This is the stuff we promise people. But I need to be confident that they're at a level when they go, okay. And I've done some crazy things, Jen. I had a mom and dad came in with a 17-year-old son who had an Adderall addiction. And we had Adderall in the office because someone had give it to us. We'd taken it off somebody because he said enough. So with this kid, I wanted to know if he was ready for the program. And he seemed to be saying all the right things. But I got the Adderall out the drawer and said, hey, I've got some of this Adderall left. Let's start the program tomorrow. Let's have 2 of these Adderall right now together, me and you. And we'll not tell your parents. And he said, oh, that's a great idea. I put the Adderall away, called his parents in and said he's no good for us when he's not ready yet. That's how much. Well, other people would just take him and take the checkbook, because when parents finally come into us, we're usually the last stop. And when they come to us, especially when we was really busy in Dallas, it's kind of an open checkbook. Just get my son well or daughter well, and you can have whatever you want. But we're not like that. We charge the same for the guy who's a mechanic. We charge the same as the guy who's just made a multi-million-dollar movie. Yeah. We don't sort of treat anybody any different. Everyone's on the same level.
Yeah. And, I love that story. And what about the parents? What about getting them help? How do you support them?
Well, we have a program as well, which obviously
Yeah.
Is we have to make sure that the mom, the dad, the wife, the husband, the sister, brother, they have to buy in as well. So I know we heard this. I'm going to say it again. It's like when we go to the house is sick. Not only the alcoholic, let's say the son, but the house is sick as well because recovery has its own language. So we take the kid out and let's say the house speaks German and we take him over to us and we teach him Japanese, which is the recovery language, for instance. Then we put him back into the house. As one of 2 things going to happen because they don't understand each other. The family are going to get help or the kid's going to go back to speak in German. Yeah. And in layman's terms, that means all behavior. And I once heard somebody say, well, I'm acting out all behavior. And this other guy next to him said, well, if you're acting out all behavior, it's not all behavior, it's current behavior. And that really shocked me. I'm like, oh my God, it is. That's exactly what it is. So mom and dad need help as well.
Well, and I actually believe in, it seems like the mom and dad if the mom and dad got the help first, that would change everything.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of aiding stuff going on, enabling and letting them get away with murder, especially if there's been, absence of parents while growing up, if they're working too much, very early see, then they left the kids to their own devices. And as long as it doesn't end up in prison or jail, it's okay what you do. I was working in a house worth about $15 million in Highland Park. And the son, who was 16, had to make an appointment to see his mom at weekend because the nannies and everybody would take care of him. And that's a sad house when it comes to that. So no wonder there's rife addiction all over the place. The husband's having affairs left, right, and center. The mom is so out of her head on prescription pills that she can't hardly walk. and the son's downstairs mixing with the nanny as if, he doesn't know who loves him, who doesn't love him. And the first thing he's going to turn to is drugs and alcohol. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it is. That is fascinating. I know my son said to me the other day, he goes, Mom, I mean, the reason we're all so close and we've healed is because, you did your work. He goes, and you weren't a Xanax popping soccer mom. And I was like, oh, there is such a thing as, not to be from a label place, but from a place of like people are hurting. And so what is your feeling on labeling alcoholism, addicts, all of that?
There's pros and cons. I think in the industry, while seeking treatment, it's a great idea because you've got something, you have a disease. It's called alcoholism. Therefore, you are an alcoholic. But once you get into recovery, then you're either an ex-problem drinker or recovered alcoholic. But I think the labels are good inside the circle. But outside the circle, I really think nobody should be mentioning that they have a problem, because believe me, I've seen people lose jobs, lose positions, lose runs for cabinet and stuff like that because people have found out an alcoholic, and it's just absolutely crazy.
That's interesting. Who has influenced you most in your life?
There's a couple of people who influenced me. I want to say my dad, even though I was a quiet guy, influenced me today of looking after my family and doing the right thing. But whilst growing up, I didn't really have a lot of people. I will say my uncle Peter Walsh, if you're watching, Peter, and I guess you will be, a huge influence because he was a guitar player. He had all tattoos over him. He was one of the cool guys. He had more women than anyone else, and I just always wanted to be like him. And then when I went into college, I met Freddie Mercury, and he kind of had a change on my life that, hey, things are not as serious as you think they are. He'd go around calling everyone darling, and he called me darling. Bobby, darling. He used to call me Bobby. I think Bobby anyway. I think it was him. But he put darling at the end of it, which made everything just so it's not that, it's not that big a deal. We're all in life together, and just chill the fuck out, Rob. And that's still the lesson for me today, because I'm an alcoholic with a short temper, and it's just I've got to be careful.
Yeah. And is your Uncle Peter the one that got you into the music world?
Yes, he did. Yes, that was. I remember when he was. It was separated from his first wife, and that's my mama's brother, and he came to stay at our house. And he would get his guitar every night and rehearse the songs coming up. And I was just intrigued by that, the whole thing that he could have a daytime job and yet go out on Friday, Saturday and Sunday and earn enough money to pay his mortgage, pay his car and have food for the week. And his daytime job went straight in the bank and never got touched. I love that idea.
Mm-hmm. I love it. In some ways, Dr. Robin, and I say this in a, not a, fawning on you. So let me just say that. But in some ways, you're a Renaissance man. I mean, you're a musician, you're a doctor, the brain, right? You can have intellectual conversations. What has you stay in play curiosity today?
Stay in play curiosity?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
What has you, what has you still curious about life, still curious about?
Oh, yes. It's just that here's one of the biggest things. And for those guys who don't know, there's two people that have a huge influence on my life today. One of them is my wife, Jay Bear, and the second one is Jennifer Lovely.
Oh,
and
right.
The reason why I say that is the only time, apart from my wife, have I ever listened to somebody and spewed my guts out was to you. So the fact is that, and the reason why I'm telling you all that is because today I'm teachable. It's like, here's me. And I'm strong enough now. I'm well known in the community for what I do. I've got nothing to prove to anyone anymore. So why not let everyone know that you're human? And by doing that, it opens up different things every single day that we get excited about. God knows what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. As you know, Jay Bear has a schedule, and tonight I'll say, what's my day tomorrow? So it's like a new and exciting day. But just the fact of meeting people that I can help, being of service to people, try and be humble, and just be a good husband and a good friend.
Yeah, I love that. who do you want to help the most now? Like, you know, in so many points of the work that you do, I know that you don't really need the money, Rob. Like we know that, right? And there's a need to pay for services so that we can own our part in the process, right? So we understand that. But who do you really want to help today to really support you, and not support you, but as an expression of your soul, if you were to look at it from that?
I still have a soft place for the guy on the street that can't afford treatment. I really do, because that was me, you know. And of course, every alcoholic and addict would like to help, but the guy on the street, and it's one of the reasons why we started our nonprofit just recently, In the Trenches Foundation, is to help these people. Because when I was on the streets, who would have thought that I'd be here today if it wasn't through one person that came around and helped me? So my heart will always be in the trenches, in with the guys that, you know, could be somebody if they were given a chance, just like me. You know, I should have died time and time again, but somebody gave me a chance to be who I am today, which is an absolute miracle.
Yeah, it is a miracle. And I love that in some ways your experience of homelessness was like the tears on your life path, right? The trail of your life path. Like,
yes.
Because who knows would you have been dealing with addiction and any of that if you had not had this experience?
No, I don't think so. I really don't think I'd be the person I am. I definitely wouldn't have been intrigued enough about alcoholism. I'd have probably been a run-of-the-mill psychologist, or not touched it at all. I mean, I didn't use my degree when I got out of college. I went straight in the police force. So, yeah, I think that at the time, my homelessness was absolutely just the worst thing that ever happened to me. But looking back now, it was probably one of the most intriguing and challenging and educational things that happened to me, because the time on the streets, the 14 months on the streets, it really was like a semester at Harvard for me, because the information and the stuff I got, and you know, being on the streets, I met a scientist who used to work at NASA, who decided to be homeless, and he'd give up on everything, and he was happy as anything. He'd push his little Tesco trolley around with a load of clothes and collect tin cans, and, you know, and he was happy. And to see that side of it, that not everybody who are homeless, you know, sort of ended up that way, but, you know, there's a handful of people that want to live that way and be off the grid. So I love the fact that I was put through hell. Mm-hmm. The only regret I have is that my kids were put through hell also, and still suffer today from my alcoholism. Because the other thing I want to mention is alcoholism is rife when it happens, and it affects everybody we come into contact with, especially loved ones and family and daughters and stuff like that. And we need to realize that. My biggest saying was, hey, I'm not hurting anybody else, just hurting myself. Well, that wasn't true. I was going to oblivion every day, so I wasn't getting hurt. Everyone else around me was getting hurt, and still get hurt today. You know, me and my brothers still do not talk, and me and my youngest daughter, Abigail, still don't talk. And that's the aftermath of my alcoholism.
Wow. The impact is massive and deadly.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there were times when I, you know, thought back of what I did, and, you know, my daughters and stuff, and I just wanted to end it all. I just had a plan and everything. I'll make no bones about it. And this was after I came to America, by the way. You know, so sober over here working in the industry, just got thinking one day that I've messed everything up. And my daughters, the biggest, you know, thing I've ever done in my life was obviously raise my daughters as best as I can. But yeah, that was a big thing for me. But when she come back in my life, one of them did. You know, I'm just glad that I didn't do that. I have been known in the past to have a gun in my mouth, loaded gun in my mouth in America. Nobody knows this ever. It's the first time I'm telling anybody this. It's kind of a hush secret within our family. But I was sat in a car with a gun in my mouth thinking, what's the point? Nobody cares what I do. I'm not having an effect on the world. My daughters don't speak to me. You know, I've messed everything up. My fucking mom just died with cancer because worrying about me. My dad's messed up because she died. It's like, what the hell? Just fucking leave it and end it all. But I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. And gosh, I mean, thanks for sharing that. I don't want to step over that. Thanks for sharing that. That's some deep pain to be in that.
Yeah, and obviously you look at that and you go, hey, have I really recovered from this shit? I mean, alcohol's not a problem anymore, but what is? And the other thing that I've never shared online before is I went to the Meadows some 4 years ago for PTSD.
Yeah.
That caused all this, and for trauma. And I spent 6 weeks there, and it cost me $50,000 to go because you don't take insurance. But I went there and I got treatment, and so two things that came up today that I feel a lot better sharing is, one, I had a gun in my mouth, and two, I've been for treatment. In the last 4 years. That was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable, because they specialize in somatic experience, which I knew nothing about. Because of that, I'm now Meadows trained in somatic experience. So it's kind of, I had to go there to learn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in some ways, like, what a gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And the other part about that is that it's also just shows that you continue to have to do your own work and have to heal your own traumatic experiences and your past. And then from that, I feel like there's a legacy that's being left.
I hope so. But, us all, the guys that are listening to this probably, have their own recovery groups and stuff, but we have to be very careful. We have to be more careful sometimes than the patients, because we become invincible, or I did. I became invincible, and there's only me that can sort things out. And everyone wants to see Dr. Rob and Dr. Rob and Dr. Rob and Dr. Rob. And we try to palm people off in Dallas, and they only want to see me. And slowly but surely, what was happening is everybody I saw took a piece of me away, because I'm so passionate about what I did. The breaking, the trip to the Meadows was all part of the same deal. Is we have to look after ourselves, and if we don't, there will be consequences, and there was for me.
Yeah. I hear that. As we end this, I'm curious, what do you hope to have changed in the industry itself?
I hope that I've brought it a little bit to the surface rather than inside the dark, that I've brought, my education and who I am allows people also to spring up and go, hey, I can do that. And I have an important job. I'm willing to say that I had an alcohol problem and I'm recovering. I think the more we do that, the better. So that's one. And the other one is just for helping people in the community. I mean, I only mention this 3 or 4 times a year, but we do a lot for the community. That, we give thousands, hundreds of thousands if the truth was known. But we've been known to give $10,000, $20,000 people dollars to somebody who was struggling with kids, had nowhere to live, So we paid 5 years of a rent in an apartment. We bought somebody else a car. We loaned somebody, not loan, we give him 6 or 7 grand to pick himself back up. I mean, I hope someday, like when I'm gone, people will remember that Dr. Rob Kelly was a decent guy. That's all I want to be, a decent guy who gave back to the community. We, as you know, we paid the lunch debt off a school, and it wasn't cheap, but we paid it. And it's stuff like that I want to be remembered for. Yeah.
And the impact that you've had on people's lives, right? Like not like, writing checks is generous, and they're offering it. I mean, and it's amazing to be able to give that way, but also like your impact from your soul's expression is really like, that's the conversation that people will have at your funeral.
I hope so. That's really nice to hear that. I hope so. But the thing is with when you're at a certain stage of your career, people think you already know. So I can't remember the last time somebody said, hey, what you do is just unbelievable. Thank you so much for what you do. I don't think anybody's ever said that to me, because when my wife asked somebody once, why don't you tell him? He goes, well, he already knows. He's the best. I mean, it's Rob Kelly, it's like, still need to hear it, just making sure. So I hope that's the conversation they have at the funeral.
Yeah. And, that's really, and I know you know this, but that's one of the things that I do at the end of every session with our clients is, what can I acknowledge you for? And really beginning to have the patient begin to ask, like, this is what I need. I need to be acknowledged for this. It makes all the difference in the world. All the difference in the world. So with that said, what would you like to be acknowledged for?
Today I would like to be acknowledged for my tenacious attitude whilst working with other people, I think, and the fact that I'm a great husband. I've had a lot of practice in my third marriage, but yeah, being a decent guy, a decent husband today, I think, without philandering around with every person that comes up. Because what a lot of people don't know is, and it always makes me and Jay Bear smile, is whenever I speak anywhere or go anywhere, I mean, you know what car I drive, you've seen the way I dress. I mean, you can tell I'm a millionaire just by looking at me. And it's amazing how many younger girls will come up and want a piece of that, you know, because they can step straight into all this money. If I could just grab Rob, even though he's almost 60, his bank account looks awesome, looks more attractive than he does, you know. But to be in a relationship and have the self-sense to go, you know, I don't care how pretty you think you are, or how thin you are, or blonde you are, or tall you are, you could never replace what I have right now. And I think that's maturity with me, because that wasn't always the case.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Like, and you shared that with me, like the first couple of days that you and I started speaking. And it was, I was like, oh, he must be telling me this just because he thinks maybe that's what I'm after. But really what I was after is that I don't like to spend my time with people that don't look into their deeper parts of themselves. I knew that about you. And so, and what I want to acknowledge about that is that your legacy is already happening. Your soul already out there expressing itself. Like, you don't have to demand it here now. It's actually already out there. Your commitment to not only yourself and your growth, but also to your wife and your family is evident and apparent in everything that you do. And your relationship with Jay Bear is amazing. Like, I love the playfulness.
Everybody says that. Everybody says that. Yeah. Especially when you'll find out when you come to the house, it's like, we're always laughing and joking and bouncing off each other. And, you know, we've had our niece who's 16, 17 come up to us and go, when I get married, I want a marriage like yours. Right. You know, it's like, because when we got married, I don't know whether you know this, Jen, but we had an argument about 3 days in after our marriage. It was something and nothing. It was all the pressure of the wedding, I guess. And we had an argument, and Jay Bear said, well, that's just the way marriage is. And I said fucking who? Yeah. Who's making these rules up? So we changed it, and we brought our own rules in. You know, and as long as one of us don't sleep with anybody else, then let's have a fantastic time, and let's just spend what we earn and just have a great time. And that's what we do, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you guys definitely are play, but I do want to acknowledge your curiosity, your tenacity, your brilliance, your heart. You underneath that. That bulldog, just this, like, let me roll over on my belly and just scratch my belly. Like, definitely. That's who you are. And I love that you're willing to today allow people to see that. Like, that is a gift. So thank you for that.
Thank you. This was absolutely awesome. And, and when you're watching this, because I know some people are watching this, awesome. You just found out 2 things about me that nobody else has heard outside my family. So maybe we'll do the same next week and see if we can come up with something else, because like you said, it is educational and there may be questions come in, and I'm open to anything, guys. If you have a question out there you want to send Jen or me and I'll pass it on, then I'm open to everything. And also, it's very healing. I've got to put that out there. This was like, when you first sent it over, I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. But now I've done it. It's like, I don't know. It's like I've just had one of the best counseling sessions in my life, because I'm talking about things I've never talked about. So good. Thank you so much indeed.
Yes, thank you. And so you guys out there, this is going to be a part of our Breaking Through Addiction, because when we can be honest about ourselves, our lives, when we can just share with the world, that actually has us in our true integrity, our true authentic self. And that's what Dr. Rob and I are all about. And he's kind of an anomaly. People are kind of curious about him, and I was curious about him. So here we are. And thank you. Thank you for that. And if any questions, find me on Facebook, send me a message, and I'd love to ask him anything you guys are curious about.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week, maybe.
All right. Bye.